So, you've got your data. Now what? Let's talk about how to process, that is, analyze your data, so that you can find an answer to your research question. We will first discuss what is involved in data analysis. We'll then look at how qualitative data can be analyzed. And after that, we will consider the choices of transcription for your data. Finally, we will address the steps in and look at examples of qualitative data coding. Let's start with examining what we'll look at in the data. When you analyze the data, your goal is to figure out what is going on, why it is going on, and with what consequences. And to figure that out, you need to observe patterns and themes in ethnographic and linguistic information that you have collected, and to determine what these patterns mean. Only then will you be able to make a claim about your research findings, that is, provide an answer to your research question. The first place to look for patterns and themes is the linguistic form, that is, how things are said. Here, we're examining word choices, grammatical forms, and even pronunciations. For example, let's examine Nikki Haley's speech on resigning as a U.S. ambassador to the UN. Ms. Haley is an accomplished politician, former governor of South Carolina, and was Donald Trump's appointee as a U.S. ambassador to the United Nations. When she resigned her ambassadorial position, however, she worded her speech like that. I am such a lucky girl to have been able to lead the state that raised me and to serve a country I love so very much. Despite being in her mid-40s, Miss Haley referred to herself as a girl and attributed her accomplishments to luck, thus significantly minimizing her own status and her efforts. If other similar patterns of minimizing women's accomplishments can be found in her speech, or the speech of others, we may be in a position to claim evidence of sexism, even displayed by those against whom it operates. Another place in interaction where we can find patterns and themes is sequencing. In other words, where, in relation to other speech, to other participants, to the space and time of interaction, things are said. Let's look at this pretty complex, actually, excerpt from the Senate confirmation hearing of Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh. He was being questioned here by Senator Amy Klobuchar. Please keep in mind that in this confirmation hearing, Mr. Kavanaugh is a job applicant, and Ms. Klobuchar is one of the panel who gets to decide whether he actually gets the job. Ms. Klobuchar asks Mr. Kavanaugh if he has ever blacked out drunk. This question came up because Mr. Kavanaugh had previously admitted to drinking while underage, was still very much a liking beer, as he said, and he had also been accused of committing sexual assault while underage, but also while being drunk. Ms. Klobuchar says, "So you are saying there has never been a case where you drank so much that you didn't remember what happened the night before, or part of what happened?" To which Mr. Kavanaugh responds, you're asking about, blackout. I don't know. And then he turns around and asks Ms. Klobuchar, have you? Klobuchar pursues, could you answer the question, Judge? It's not happened. Is that your answer? Yeah, says Kavanaugh, and then adds, I'm curious if you have. Klobuchar responds, I have no drinking problem, Judge. Kavanaugh says, yeah, nor do I. Klobuchar thanks him for the answers. Not only does Mr. Kavanaugh first reply to Ms. Klobuchar that he doesn't know if he's ever blacked out after drinking, but then turns around the question onto her and almost forces her to answer, asking the question twice and ignoring her push for the answer. The sequence appropriate for the formal environment of the hearing here is marked in red on your screen. The interfering questioning sequence, attempting to undermine Ms. Klobuchar's authority, is in purple. This interfering sequence suggests Mr. Kavanaugh's defiant and dismissive attitude towards at least one senator on whose approval his appointment to the Supreme Court depended at the time. The third place we look for patterns is meta-commentary. That is, comments on how people feel or what they think about the things they say. The following question appeared on TripAdvisor. The question is written without much regard to the spelling, punctuation, and grammar rules of English. There are words that are not capitalized, there are no commas, and so on and so forth. The writer apparently is not very worried about being perceived as not quite competent in the language he or she is using. However, the writer does appear to be concerned with the image of being perceived as a potentially unintelligent or unworldly person. Therefore, they preface their question with an apology, again for the potential perceptions of them by total strangers. They also sign off in a highly formal closing, "Kind regards," including the capitalization of both words. While the text in between the opening and the closing lines does not give us much insight into the author's personality, the first and the last lines do. They're ways to protect the author from possible insults that the answerers might throw at them because the author feels somewhat insecure. In the next section, we're going to look at how we look, how we go about finding these patterns and themes in linguistic forms, sequencing, and meta-commentary.